Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Eric Martin, former news editor at BoardGameGeek and now editor-in-chief of his new board game news site, BoardGameBeat. Eric, welcome to the binge. How you doing, my friend?
Very good, James. I cannot match that energy. I'm like,
Well, hey, this is
steady as we go.
this is really cool to have you on here. I always love to get kind of a wide mix of guests, and sometimes we can get a little heavy on like game designers, game creators. So anytime I can get somebody who's from a content standpoint, which is what I kind of categorize you under, I get excited. I think this is awesome, and I can't think of the last time I actually had someone that's doing kind of like an online newsletter kind of blog thing like you're doing. So it's extra special. So I do appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the pod. First, before we get into kind of Board Game Beat, because I know you're probably itching to talk about it, I want to roll the clock back, my friend. Like, you spent several years at Board Game Geek, and I want to go even before that of how you got into this industry.
I started as a freelance writer in 1997.
Wow.
My wife was already a freelance writer and mostly wrote for business publications and trade magazines and all sorts of stuff that people would normally not see. It's not fancy or anything to write about casinos or reprographic businesses or catering businesses, but it pays money.
Yeah.
So I wrote about all sorts of business topics and did lots of profiles, and slowly over time started trying to pitch coverage of games to different publications because that was my hobby. I want to merge it with my work. If I, can write more about games, then I spend more time thinking about that, right? So I ended up writing about Primordial Soup for Discover, and I had a bi-monthly column in a coffee magazine. Went out to coffee shops and all sorts of little things like that. And that was sort of minor in what was going on. But I started a website, Fun and Board Games, in 2006. And I also started writing for a site, BoardGameNews.com, which was run by Rick Thornquist. And he retired. Like, he was like 6 months after I started writing for him. He's like, yeah, I'm done with this. I want to go do something else. I'm going to close this down. And I said, this is what I want to do. Like, I had my own site. And he's like, you can take it, whatever. And just handed it over. There were columnists writing for it already. And they're all like, can we still write for you? And I'm like, why would I not want you to write? Like, I love reading what you're writing. It's good. And I did that for 4 years. Someone nicely offered to do a site redesign because I was doing my own coding. I was like, I'm not a coder. So I'd look at sites and look at the HTML code and try to, retrofit everything to do what I wanted to do. And someone offered a new site design, and it was great until it stopped being great. And the server needs blew up tremendously. That was late 2010. At that point, I reached out to Scott and Dirk at BoardGameGeek because I had met them at many shows. I knew it was a big site. And just say, like, your server needs are much larger than mine. How does this work? Give me some tech advice, or who should I talk with? And they said, we've been thinking about having someone write for us. Like, do you just want to write for us instead? And that was how I started working for them in 2011.
So did you
So,
merge that other site into with that one, or how did that kind of
I
transition
mean,
happen?
so Board Game Geek bought I gave them the Board Game News
Yeah.
URL.
Okay.
And so you go to that site and it forwards to the news blog that I was writing on Board Game Geek.
Got it.
So technically nothing transferred over because the site just imploded, very bad. I have the Scott, the owner of Board Game Geek, gave me like the raw files that he had extracted, and it's got all the coding and everything. And
Yeah.
mostly it just like I still have it in a
There's
hard
got to be
drive somewhere.
value in that URL though. Board Game News. Like, my God.
Maybe so, but I gave it to Board Game Geek as part of me going to work for them, and so they still have it. It still redirects to the news blog on Board Game Geek. I'm not going to ask for it back because that was
Interesting.
me doing the deal, right? I went to work for them,
Yeah.
and they were starting the blog system at that time. So I got to be blog number one, BGG News, because we were doing all sorts of testing. How does all this work with the posting and subscriptions, and everything on Board Game Geek is custom code.
Oh,
Everything.
really?
It's kind of amazing because there's not that many coders who work on the site, but they do everything. And so everything is a custom solution, and trying to integrate tools as they feel they can create something that people want.
Yeah.
You know, like initially when the site debuted, it didn't have a version system. It was just a game page. And then people started being like, well, I've got this one with a different cover, different, yeah, and so
Yeah.
they add versions, they add a marketplace, they add, all sorts of other things just as people ask for them.
I guess they're a
So
slave to the scale of like how quickly they scaled, right? Because now you're at a point where it is such an immense database. I can't imagine what what it would take to actually put that into kind of like a modern day kind of web form. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. It's not the
yeah,
sexiest interface, and it's really difficult to work with as a
yes.
publisher.
I mean,
It
it
sucks. I
was,
hate it, but I mean, it's useful because it's like the Wikipedia of board
yes,
games, right? And it is the standard, right? So it's
yeah.
not like someone else going to go create like a database of board games. That is the standard. So they have that benefit, but to bring it kind of to the next level has got to be a monumental undertaking just based on the amount of
Yeah.
stuff you have saved in there, right?
I don't know. When did you start using Board Game Geek? What year?
I started using about 7 years ago. Well, basically when I got into the industry, 8 years ago now, I guess.
Okay, so just before the site redesign with the
Oh,
new
it's been
logo
redesigned.
rebranding. Yes. So if you go to the dashboard page, I think that's the right page now, you'll see the old sort of layout where it's very much just like text heavy, with very
Yeah,
akin to Wikipedia,
sure. Yeah,
where it's just the data. And that's all we're really focusing on is the data.
yeah.
And the site was very much that data driven. And it was redesigned in 2019 with a new homepage, new sort of graphics, new logo, lots of things changing, but it is still a very data heavy site.
It is. Yeah.
And I liken it to a battleship where it just doesn't dock, right? So everything that's happening to it has to happen while it's on the water. You're
That's a
going to
good
change
point.
something, and you're just like, doing something on this side, something here, add a new
Yeah,
crow's
and the
nest.
risk is if it breaks, right? When you're trying to update it,
Yeah.
then that's a problem, right? So
Yeah.
I get
Well,
it.
in the old days, if you go back, like I started using the site in 2003, right? Founded in 2000, and in the old days, they hosted their own servers, and they had their own server racks in Dallas
Oh wow.
because that's where the owners were at that time, and the site would sometimes go down for a day or two.
Yeah.
And then they would drive over and they'd reboot the servers and they do all this other stuff. And that was a constant thing back in the early 2000s, even late 2000s. And eventually, I think they're now with the Amazon web hosting, and
Mm.
services way more consistent then. Also, way more expensive, but
Yeah, for sure. I like the.
that's
I mean, the mobile app is version of their site's great, and I know
right.
like many of my colleagues use it and log their games and things like that on there, which I think is really cool. Um, so when you were writing for Board Game Geek, so how often were you publishing an article? Was it like a weekly, daily, like
So
how?
publishing daily
Yeah,
is
okay.
pretty much a post a day. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Just varied a lot. Ahead of conventions, there are lots of games. Of course, people are going to be, we're at Gen Con, we're at Gen Con. And so let's talk about what's going to be at Gen Con. And one of the things I started doing at Board Game Geek was a convention preview list.
Mm,
I had done this previously on Board Game News, where I would have, here's what's going to be at Gen Con. I reach out to as many publishers as possible, give me a list, and we just put it all in there. Here's what's for sale and here's what's for demo. And we did that for Spiel. And then we started doing it for other shows as well. We do it for Origins, sometimes for PAX, and do it at the beginning of the year for the preview shows like New York Toy Fair and Gamma Expo and other stuff that's not open to the public, but all these publishers are previewing things at those shows that will be released later.
mm.
And the convention previews were something that carried over to Board Game Geek and became a magnet for people who are looking for information. Here's a big list of 500 titles that are going to be out at Gen Con. And if you want to dive into it, go ahead. You can do whatever you want in terms of tagging, here's what I'm interested, not interested. You can follow up. You can, sometimes pre-order. There's all sorts of ways to do it. And that's kind of BGG itself, where it has so much stuff. And you might not care about the box size of a game, but every version listing has a space for like a box size. And if you're shipping games regularly, you do care about that because you want to know how I'm going to package all this stuff. And so there's so much data, people get to kind of specialize in what they want to use. And then all the other stuff there might just feel like noise because you can't filter it out, but it's all there for someone. So,
and then when you're writing on a daily basis, like is it literally writing about literally anything you could think of? How did you come up with like a schedule, I guess, of right. Like, cause that's a ton of content, right? Like if you're writing, that's a lot of content, and being a writer, I'm sure you can do it much more efficiently than the average Joe. I know when I'm trying to write something, it might take me a whole day to, put an article together as I kind of rewrite it and so forth. But, still, I guess having kind of the influx of material to kind of work with, although I know this industry's large, how did you approach it?
So initially, I started doing this in 2006, and it was at that point, there are many fewer releases for one thing. It was much easier to just focus on something, read the rules, write up something a bit longer. And as my time at BGG went on, I was there for 15 years. I was on all sorts of mailing lists. I go on social media, I reach out to publishers directly. I get all this information. I just had a giant folder that was to write about, games to cover, ? And I'd go through there and I'd try to find a few that were on some sort of theme. Like these are all nature-based games. These are all two-player games, solo games, or it's just here's a publisher that's announced a whole bunch of things. Or a designer, because I do like Reiner Knizia roundups and things like that.
Yeah.
So there'd be some sort of theme running through there, and that makes it much easier to at least have some sort of shape for what you're doing. Similar to any sort of game design, right? You have, here's the story that I want to tell, or here's the experience that I want to deliver to people. And so that gives you some sort of shape to wrap everything around, rather than just saying, I'm going to take the first 5 things off the top of the list.
Yeah.
And it's going to be this grab bag of nothing.
So was it up to you to kind of come up with, or like, would they feed to you to say like, look, we've got, these guys have bought some banner ads, so, we have to cover this particular game or anything like that? Or
I would talk with Scott maybe once every month or two, like outside of conventions, and he'd just be like, hey, how things going?
Oh, wow.
Like, it was very much just, I would write about what I think BGG readers wanted to read and what I thought would be interesting to write about. And sometimes those overlapped and sometimes not. Sometimes it's much more like, this is something that's really interesting me, and I feel like I can say something about it, write more, or whatever. And lots of times it'll just be like, here's stuff that I think people would be interested in.
So it's never reviews, so to speak, though. It'd be more kind of informative information on stuff. Is that kind of fair to say?
Initially, that's true. Although as time went on, I did end up doing reviews. Initially, the idea was to not do reviews. Back on BoardGameNews.com, I did reviews. Other people published reviews as well. And when I went to BoardGameGeek, it was just me, because the site was trying not to have an official site opinion.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Like,
you want to be neutral, right?
Says this is terrible, right? Yeah. It's awesome, whatever. You want to separate all that. But as time went on, it became clear that, at least to me, and I think, in general, this is Eric's opinion. Eric is writing about this. And I would write articles that, I'm interested in. For example, I got to preview Time Stories way back in, I don't know if you played that.
I haven't, no.
So it's a cooperative game in which you're given a situation where you're sent back in time and you have to, you're immersed in this story. It's kind of like the escape room games before the escape room games came out. And you would have some scenario, you would go along and possibly you die, you fail the mission, whatever it is. And then because it's a time travel thing, and then just start back again.
That's cool.
Where you were. But you have the memory of everything. And so now you explore this other. We didn't open this door before. We didn't go through this room. This person, we confronted them before. They were very angry. Let's try a different approach. And doing all that. I got to try that game in 2012, I think, 2013, when it was just prototype. It was the most fabulous experience. And I just raved about it in my write-up because it was so tremendously affecting just playing that game, and then played it again the next year, and then played it again the next year because it was in development for a very long time.
Yeah.
And every time it kept being this fabulous thing. And it became very much like, this is Eric writing this. This is not like a site, opinion. Sure. And so I end up doing more reviews.
Did you have to do like a disclaimer, like this does not reflect the opinions of BoardGameGeek.com or anything like that? Or
I never did that.
No.
No. Actually, I never thought about doing that. No one ever asked. Yeah.
It's like when you watch a TV, right? And then like they're doing a commentary and like, this does not reflect the opinions of this station. Yes. We're only carrying the show, kind of a thing, right? Was there any
disclose? I would disclose if it's a review copy.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Or if I purchased it, but it was never like, this is a personal opinion.
Did you ever have a blowback off of anything you've written at all at BoardGameGeek? Was there ever anything where it was like, oof, that got a little heated?
Yes. So one thing early on, I think it was 2012, I would have publishers write things, or designers as well. I published designer diaries, and sometimes every so often a publisher diary. And there was a situation with the crowdfunded edition of Upfront, because Canadian publisher Valley Games is doing a new edition, and people had questions about what was going on. And I reached out to the publisher and be like, hey, you want to write something about this? And they wrote something about it. And it turned out that no one got their game and all the money was gone.
Oof.
So I had given this person a platform and it super backfired. It looked terrible because essentially I didn't give them ad space, but it was effectively ad space. Effectively, They were marketing to be like, yep, this is what we're doing. All is going to be good. So that changed how I was handling those diaries. Stopped doing designer diaries for crowdfunded projects when they were in the midst of crowdfunding. Instead, it was when that game is hitting in the market, when it's about to be released at a convention, then I'll publish a diary. But
that's a tough one. Like I've had this on the binge, right? So we've had, I think now probably three publishers or games, I guess, where we had the people on the podcast, and then I move on to the next podcast, right? Like it's out of sight, out of mind. I'm not thinking about the last interview. I've got, so I've had
hundreds.
Yeah. Like literally we're at this episode 400 and some odd, right? So, or 300 and some odd. So, but you'll have people that will, if their game's not fulfilled and it's clear that the publisher folded or whatever, and they're very, very angry, they'll literally Google search anywhere that publisher had shown up. And sometimes it'll bring them to the interview, and then they'll drop right into the comments on that YouTube episode saying this person's this, they never delivered this, and how dare you give this person a platform? It's like, dudes, like this is 3 years ago. Like, we only have access to what we have access to, just like anybody else, right? So I take the position that I assume that most people have the best intentions when they come on our pod. We typically look for, if we're going to cover a game, I typically like to see it funded before we bring them on, so that we're not getting people all excited about something and then it gets pulled a day later, because that's happened to me a couple times before as well.
Yeah, that's when you start changing policies. And
you start changing the way you have to approach it, right? But what I can't control is if someone like 2 years goes by and someone ends up, going bankrupt or folding and not delivering their game. Like there's nothing I can do about that, nor do I even have visibility to that until someone freaks out and says, how dare you? And I'm just like, sorry, like at the time, I was just trying to learn from this person, learning what they did to be so successful on their campaign. Right. So I can appreciate where you're coming from. I guess is what I'm saying on this is that, I mean, you can't control it. Right. And you can only do your best to Highlight the cool things in the industry. My pursuit is always to learn, so I'm always trying to learn from others. And when you meet the number of people that we've met, law of numbers, there's going to be something that's just not going to work out, and
Yeah.
in terms of the people you've talked to, and that's unfortunately comes with the game. So
Yes. And
Yeesh.
in general, as you say, it's people where bad things happen. Family members have medical disasters. Someone loses their main job. There's all sorts of
People
things
literally die.
because
Like I had this on one of my because people that know the podcast know that I'm a publisher, and I recently had this. Somebody reached out and said, "Hey," from the backer's account, saying, "Hey, I'm the daughter of this such and such person. Uh, we regret to say this person actually passed away, and we're just trying to track down like if you haven't shipped yet, can we get a refund?" And like it turns out we had shipped this game like 4 months earlier when the person was still
right.
with us, but like life happens, right? Like these kind of things happen where people move and they don't update any of their mailing information, and as you said, things can happen. We have a very tough economy right now where things are happening globally, which can impact people's jobs and things like
You
that.
don't say.
Yeah, to put it lightly, right? But no, but the reality is that the things happen. I guess is what I'm trying to say. That can
Yeah.
sometimes impact people who have the best intentions, but unfortunately things don't work out. And
Right.
certainly I've backed some games myself like that where that's happened, and that's I guess part of the risk I guess of these crowdfunding campaigns, right?
Yeah. And it's something that maybe people were more aware about at the beginning because it was when it debuted 2011, 12, people had more of the sense like, wait, really? I give them money and then like a year later I get something?
Well, at the
But
beginning,
it's
remember
now
that.
just the thing that you do and you're just like, yeah, sure, it's a pre-order,
Yeah, and
but
that's it.
it's
You nailed it on
not.
the head because Kickstarter, GameFound, all these were designed originally to help people get their thing off the ground, right? So lots of sketches, and here's what I'm trying to do. Help me realize my dream of getting this published. And now here's this package thing that's ready to go, and manufacturing everything is done. We just need you to basically put your order in, and then once we hit our funding goal, then we'll start going into
Yeah.
manufacturing and shipping. Very much a pre-order system versus where it was. Um,
Well, that's also ties in with the marketing of it
yeah,
because now a lot of people will do a year's worth of convention travel, promotion, get up the effort. Then we have the campaign, and then it's another year before you actually get the game. So it's like this very extended system rather than just going on Kickstarter and being like, I got this idea and I want to do it.
and it's created a lot of jobs in the industry now. There's a lot of content creators and things like this, right, that help promote games and
Yes, there
that
are.
kind of whole cycle. So leaving. So when did you leave Board Game Geek? When was your last kind of
January
blog there?
27th, 2026, exactly 15 years after I started.
Wow,
I asked Scott, I'm like, can I just do that? Like a nice round number,
you're like the
15 years
Gretzky's. Wanted to
exactly.
end right on that.
Yeah. And he said, yeah, sure. I mean, he said he was bummed to have me go, but
Yeah.
it's like Scott is great. He's a great person and I love working for him, but it's also like I've been doing this for 15 years and I kind of wanted to just start fresh. So
Sometimes you need
it's weird.
change, right? 15 years is a
Yeah.
is a, an immense amount of time to be doing the same thing. And
Yeah.
so with Board Game Geek or Board Game Beat, I'm saying Board Game Geek, but Board Game Beat and
Yes.
BGB, which is Board Game Binge as well, which is funny. I read in your one blog you try not to use the acronym because there's so many
Yeah.
BGBs in the industry.
Yes. The board game bliss and all
Board
that.
Game Plus
Yeah.
is another one here in Canada. Yeah. So walk us through Board Game Beat. So what is this all about? What are you bringing to the audience, kind of with this new approach, and just kind of walk us through it. I'm going to share it on screen if that's okay while we're chatting.
Sure. So the basics of Board Game Beat are similar to what I did on Board Game Geek or
Mm.
BGG News, where it's lots of game announcements, industry news roundups. So that's the basics. That's the bread and butter there, or game announcements. You're going to see what's coming out from all these different publishers. And aside from that, I am going to do regular long form articles where I talk about different topics. And I try to do a content calendar where all in February, I'm going to talk about different aspects of puzzles and how they sort of overlap with games and where we find this middle ground. So it's just like a game versus puzzle article. There's going to be an interview with the brands talking about 10th anniversary of Exit, the game. I interview Rolf Peters, who designs all the IQ logic puzzles for smart games. It's done 130 of those things. It's kind of amazing
Wow.
to, and we really dive into what goes into the creation of all this. And I didn't really have the time for this sort of long form article on a regular basis on BGG, just because there was so much stuff coming in
Sure.
all the time. But in addition to actually writing the news, I was also an admin. So I would receive questions from users and publishers and designers, and was doing the convention previews and doing all this other stuff. And it wasn't just writing. And so now I'm trying to do it's just writing. So do the news and I have time for longer things as well.
And I'm just scrolling over. I mean, when you say long format, these are long format, which is really cool. There's actually a few games that when I was scrolling earlier today, I was like, ooh, that actually looks interesting. So definitely mission accomplished in that regards, right? Which is
Yeah.
to get people excited about the industry and excited about the hobby.
So
Um,
I'll just say, like, I know one of the things we did a survey for what people want. And one of the things is like maybe a little less FOMO. Like, we don't need to know everything, or don't
yeah.
talk about games necessarily that we can't see or can't ever get. And the problem with that, of course, is I don't know where you are in the
Mm,
world. Everyone around the world could see a website. So I, at some point, on my list is to pick a country and spend a month exploring games from that country, designers, what's the background. Like,
that's
I
cool.
don't know. I went to Japan several times in the mid
I was gonna
2010s
say
and covered
Japan
the
be
game
perfect.
market event.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I covered that a lot. But now Japan's fairly well known.
Hmm.
But there's also like Singapore and Thailand, Malaysia.
Korea.
There's still Taiwan, Korea. I mean, Korea is more established, but there's a lot of countries that have growing design communities that don't have a lot of attention on them. Indonesia, yeah, that's another one as well. They've had a few like Indonesian booths at Spiel where it'll be kind of a collective of designers coming together, try to get attention. And it's really interesting to see how those industries develop.
Mm,
And yes, I would be writing about games that you probably can't get. But I'm, in addition to talking about things you might be interested in playing, often I just want to be like, here's what people are doing with game design. I have some sort of idea, and maybe just the idea of it will trigger something in you where you say, like, that's cool. Maybe I'd like to do something like this,
yeah.
because there's the range of people from self-published down to, Hasbro. That's a huge scale of difference in what you do, but pretty much anyone can publish a game.
I think seeing things from around the world, even if you can't get your hands on that game, it's almost like there's a reason why National Geographic and these different channels are so popular because people want to see, they want to escape, they want to see things that they can't see in their everyday lives, right? And
Yeah.
I think being able to share some things from around the world and how other cultures have embraced games, I think is it's kind of cool. I like it. It's a neat hook.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I felt like that when I grew up in Tennessee and moved to New York when I was 10.
mhm.
And I knew nothing about the world at all. And so I go up to New York and everyone, I was just like, wow, everyone's so weird and they talk funny and it's all this stuff going on. And like, I didn't know anything. And we had a couple of exchange students in high school. It was the first time I think I'd encountered people who weren't not from the United States. And you're just like, what? Whoa, they do things totally different. And yet it works.
Hmm.
And then my wife got a job in, I forget when it was, 2016. And we went to the Netherlands. And so again, you're like immersed in this culture where things aren't familiar and yet things are normal for everyone there. And so you start learning like the normal is only what you're familiar with. And so
Hmm.
you're trying to go out and explore all this other stuff and see what other things, see how other things can be done,
Yeah.
right? The system that you grow up with is not necessarily the best system. It's just a system that you grow up with. And there could be other ones that work just as well. So
How have you, I guess, monetized the word to use? Like, there's memberships, I think, with the site as
yeah.
well. And what does the membership get people?
So we have a few ad slots because we're trying to keep it pretty much like lots of white space,
Yeah.
trying to keep it pretty sparse. We have memberships as a free level if you just want to comment on the site. So that way, If you cause trouble, then you remove access to that person. Um, but if you pay a couple dollars, then you get to participate in surveys, and $5 you get ad-free audio versions of articles, and $10 I do like a behind the beat post.
Mm.
Uh, the first week of the site, we did everything for free, made it available to everyone just so you could see what things will be like. And the idea, of course, is if you like what I'm doing, hopefully you support the site and I can keep doing it,
Yeah.
because now it's me. We got some ads, and that's it. And it like it helps in the sense that uh, I mean, ideally people like it and they want to see more. And I'm trying to also cover more things because at BoardGameGeek, like we used to go to the Spielwarenmesse fair in Germany at the beginning of the year. It's the toy and game fair.
Yep.
It's massive. It's like larger than like 3 football fields put together. It's massive, this hall of everything there. And so I see all these games that are going to be coming out for the next 6 months. And we used to cover that regularly, and then we stopped after COVID
Mm.
because everything, lots of things changed.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to go there and see everything that's new. And I don't know of anyone else in the US who's covering that. So
That's
there
cool.
we go. Yeah, saw some German media people there, but
And there's audio, and so your site has audio as well.
yes, I'm doing for the long form articles, not just the regular news announcement posts, but long form articles. I'm doing audio versions as well
Mm.
because I know some people like hearing that. I have, unlike your intro, my voice is usually pretty monotone. I hear a lot of people say I have a calm speaking presence when I'm doing videos and things like
Yeah.
that. So
And are you
I'm
gonna do
trying.
like video as well? Like, will it be video coverage?
Maybe I've done one video. I have another one I'm doing, and I'm not sure about continuing videos on a regular basis because it's not a skill that I'm necessarily good at.
Mm.
In that, with writing, you can take your time and edit more
Yeah.
and really craft what you want to say. And with video, usually I would do reviews and I would just do take after take after take after take until I felt comfortable with what I did.
Yeah.
And that's a very time consuming process.
It is. It's an acquired skill, so something it takes
Yes.
lots of repetition uh, to get to the point where you're comfortable doing it and that you can shorthand it. And like I was thinking earlier today, I was like, gosh, like where I first started on this podcast, it would be like minimum 2.5 hours of research ahead of time per guest, then getting all the overlays and everything right, another hour, hour and a half, then post editing everything. I mean, it was a time sponge, and just out of necessity, you just start creating shorthand and start getting to the point where the biggest, I think, growth for me was just not caring. That's the hardest part, to get to the point, be like, nothing matters and no one cares. And if you can get that in your head, then when you're editing a video, you're not going to get caught up on whether you stammered a word or whether you said something not quite right. You're just going to cut it and move on.
Right.
Because you know what? The grand scheme of things, it's zero impact on the universe. So,
Right.
if you can get
But it's
that, a lot of people get caught up on that, right?
but it's also experience. Like you
Yeah.
say, you probably internalize that a lot more. When I first started writing, and my wife was writing at the same time, we write an article and then we print it out, give it to each other, red pen all over it, do again, do another draft, do another
Yeah.
draft. And then eventually you're doing all that editing beforehand before you're even writing it.
Yeah.
Like it's already just coming out more. And so it becomes much easier after 2 decades or so. Actually, now 3 decades of full time writing, pretty much. So
So what's your overall vision for this? Like, where do you see this going? Is this kind of like is it this blog, and we're gonna keep going with the news site, or do you see this kind of branching out in different directions, or kind of what's your overall plan?
so overall plan is to just do game announcements and
Mm.
articles where you're exploring what the game industry is like. So I've been doing this 19 years full time,
Yeah.
writing about games, and I feel a decent idea of how the industry works, how the publishers connect with distributors, with manufacturers, with design, like how all this goes. But it's not clear to a lot of people, and I'd like to spend time in these articles talking about different aspects of the industry. So I want to do like a whole month on manufacturing, like how you make an insert, right? People always complain, I can't fit the cards. Why does this work? Blah, 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 do all this. And everything's a compromise, right? When you're trying to design anything like that, because if you want everything, then it's going to be like, well, then the box is this big and then it doesn't fit in the IKEA shelf. And then you're like, everything's a compromise here. Or how do you manufacture wooden bits? How do you do molds? How do you do all this sort of stuff? So trying to help people get a understanding of all these different elements that come in there. I've talked with a lot of illustrators who are, trying to focus on handmade art instead of AI, and they're really trying to push for wider visibility on that. Like there's a French organization now that does this little hand-drawn icon that they contract with publishers to include on boxes. And so I got a little note here. I'm going to talk with the guy who's involved with that just so I can profile him. And, there's all these little things that are going on behind the scenes that come into the games that are actually published. And so I want to talk about that. And there's no master plan other than I come up and be like, that'd be cool to write about. And then I know enough people at this point that I can probably reach out to, again, manufacturers, distributors, whatever, and find people to answer questions.
Well, for those who want to check this out, I encourage you to go to BoardGameBeat.com. I will put a link in the show notes for people to check out. There's some really cool articles in here, and there's going to be lots more coming because...
I will just say WEricMartin.com as well.
At WEricMartin.com as well. Yeah. Awesome. I'll put a link to both in the show notes. And Eric, I want to wish you all the best for this. It looks so awesome. I loved reading some of these articles already. You've got a fan already here. I'll be listening and watching more. And I want to wish you and your wife all the best, my friend.
Yeah, thank you very much. Glad to talk.
No worries.
About to say it. Glad to talk with you as well.
Cheers.
Meet a new person. That's what we did today.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.